It's time for Come and Talk It with your host, Michael Cargill, brought to you by Texas Law Shield. Over the last decade, Michael has championed and supported the rights of law-abiding Texans to own and use firearms. He is the owner of Central Texas Gun Works, a veteran of the United States Army, and has achieved national exposure in such prestigious media outlets such as Forbes Magazine, Fox Business News, CNN Money, AOL, BBC World News, Huffington Post, and the New York Times. Cargill vigorously defends lawful gun ownership in this country without regard to party politics. And now, here's Michael Cargill.
Good day, Austin, Texas, the live music capital of the world. Let's praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Today, I want to talk about, there are quite a few cases. We have a lot of court cases going on right now. You have the Ahmaud Arbery case going on in Georgia. You have the Kyle Rittenhouse case going on in Wisconsin. Man, there's a lot happening around the country. There was a shooting that took place in Mexico, in Cancun. I want to show you some video of that and talk about that a little bit. There's a lot. There's a lot happening right now. I want to get into this Ahmaud Arbery case just a little bit and give you an update on that, because no one's talking about this case. This is a case where a guy apparently went into a house that was being built. It was under construction. And the neighbors across the street, saw this guy go inside the house, and the neighbor calls his son, hey, there's a guy going into the house across the street. And I think that's the guy that was there the night before. And so far they haven't, they're saying, hey, that was not the same person so far. And this case is happening right now. They're going to have closing arguments. And this case is going to go to the jury this week. And then we'll see what the jury has to say. So basically, the guy, Ahmaud Arbery, comes out of the house. It's under construction. He's jogging down the road, takes off running. And the homeowner across the street, along with his son, they jump in a truck and they take off, and chase this guy. Another neighbor, sees what's going on. This guy, he joins in on the chase. And they're chasing him, trying to block him in while he's running. And so there's no telling what was going through his head, because he was shot and killed and he can't testify. He can't give us a statement on what, he was perceiving that was happening while he was running down the street. And so he didn't take anything from the house. And that's important to know, because when it comes to using force or deadly force, when it comes to property, if someone goes into a home unlawfully, that's burglary. They come out, they start running down the street, and if they're taking something, you can use force or deadly force to stop them to recover that property that they've taken immediately after in fresh pursuit. And that's important, because he didn't take anything. There was no, he didn't have anything. Apparently, he just went in just to take a look at the house that was under construction, and then, continue on running down the street. And so they chased this guy, blocked him in, tried to block him, block off his path. He changed directions. They block him. He changed directions. They block him. And then finally, they catch up this guy, and he decides to put up a fight. He puts up a fight. They end up shooting him, killing him right there in the road. And let me tell you, I'm going to tell you how to get away with murder. Because if this was not videotaped at all, if the guy who was in the vehicle behind him hadn't recorded this video, we wouldn't be here discussing this case at all, because it would have been their word against his, and the fact that there was no video to show anything, then hey, the guy apparently went into the house. He, may or may not have stolen something, and we wouldn't be discussing it at all, because, they never would have gone to trial. The fact that there's a video of them chasing this guy, pretending like they're law enforcement, they have the authority to pursue someone and have the authority to conduct an investigation and try this person and convict them and then execute them on the street in Georgia. The fact that this was on video means that, guess what? Now we have a trial. And so this case is going to be handed over to the jury. They're going to do closing arguments. And I do want you to take a look at this video here that we have of one of the perpetrators in this who executed Ahmaud Arbery. Take a listen to this. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You know what? Actually, the prosecutor in the case, let me go back a little bit, because the prosecutor, before we roll this video, the prosecutor talks about how he doesn't want preachers, black preachers to be exact. He doesn't want black preachers in the courtroom because he feels that when black preachers are there sitting next to the family of Ahmaud Arbery, they can influence the jury. Now, this is important. I want to bring this up because there are several cases that we have here in Austin, Texas, several cases that we've talked about over the years where someone who's defended themselves against law enforcement, against a police officer, which we think, on this show that they were justified in defending themselves, end up getting prosecuted and convicted of murder of a police officer when we believe that they were justified. And the police officers packed the courtroom to influence the jury. So that's why I want to bring that up a little bit, because this is a common practice around the country when law enforcement officers, they want to, persuade the jury or to intimidate a jury for a particular outcome, a particular case. They will pack that jury with police officers in uniform. And so no one else can get into the room because they're filled with law enforcement officers in uniform. That's important to know, to bring up, because, he's saying, and this means that they know this tactic. They know this actually happened, and this happens around the country. And so by Al Sharpton or whoever, whatever, famous pastor or, minister sits next to the family, that's a possibility of that influence the jury to say, hey, there's something wrong here. And, we need to, pay close attention to this. And maybe this guy didn't do anything wrong and they killed this guy on the street. And, and so, yeah, it happens. Law enforcement does it all the time. And now this family's doing it by having the attorney, maybe possibly getting some famous attorney to sit next to the family or a preacher to sit next to the family. Listen to what the defense attorney had to say.
Right now, that's fine, but then that's it. We don't want any more black pastors coming in here or other Jesse Jackson, whoever was in here earlier this week, sitting with the victim's family, trying to influence a jury in this case. And I'm not saying the state is even aware that Mr. Sharpton was in the courtroom. I certainly wasn't aware of it till last night. But I think the court can understand my concern about bringing people in who really don't have any ties to this case other than political interests. And we want to keep politics out of this case. If a bunch of folks came in here dressed like Colonel Sanders with white masks sitting in the back, that would be a problem.
Yeah, so, wow. Man, let me tell you, that's some serious stuff right there. You got to listen to that and listen to how this is said, and what's really going on here. I find this very funny, and I find this very hypocritical, because it happens all around the country all the time where you have police officers will pack a courtroom to intimidate and influence a jury to decide a case on the way they want it decided. They don't like it when you play their game. In this world, I'm telling you, people, it's all about chess. You got to learn chess. Don't play checkers with these people. Play chess. And in the game of chess, what's the object of the game of chess? For the white king, the checkmate, the black king. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
This is Coleon Noir, and you're listening to Come and Talk It with Michael Cargill.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02, The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were compliant with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so, this Ahmaud Arbery case is a very interesting case. I hope you guys are following this case. We'll see how this turns out today. This case will get handed over to the jury this week. They should have closing arguments, and then we'll see what the jury comes back and says. The makeup of the jury is only, I think it's all pretty much an all-white jury and only one black juror. And so we'll see what comes back. We'll see if it's a fair and impartial jury. I think they should convict these guys, just by looking at the evidence. I think they should be convicted, all three of them, because they literally just chased the guy, thinking that they're law enforcement. They have the authority to execute a citizen arrest. You got to think about that. Do you really, can you do that? Did you witness this person committing a crime? Because there's a 911 call where one of the guys called 911, and the 911 dispatcher asked the guy, said, okay, well, what did he do wrong? He goes, well, I don't know, but he's just jogging. So what felony crime, did you see that was in your view that says you can perform a citizen's arrest? Now, this law was in effect in Georgia when this happened. This law has now been since repealed. You can no longer do a citizen's arrest in Georgia because of this case. But prior to that, you could do that. And so you got to ask yourself what crime has been committed. And I love to show my classes videos in the classroom in our handgun license course. And then I love to stop and ask the class, okay, first, what do you think? What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? I'd love to do that. And then I'll turn around to everyone and say, okay, fine. Now you told me what you would do. Tell me this. What crime has been committed? What crime did you witness just now that gives you the authority to use force or deadly force against this person? And then everyone will stop and think, oh, well, nothing. Exactly. Just because your feelings, you feel this way and you felt that, something was wrong and you felt that, possibility you saw this, but you got to ask yourself, what crime has been committed? In Texas, was it aggravated kidnapping? Was it murder? Is it sexual assault? Is it aggravated sexual assault, robbery, aggravated robbery? Was this person attempting to enter or move someone from their home, their vehicle, the place of business? Were they committing burglary? Were they committing, criminal mischief or theft during the nighttime? Any of that stuff. If not, then you don't have the authority to use force or deadly force, and you cannot perform any type of citizen's arrest. What crime has been committed? What did you witness? What did you see? And if you can articulate that, just like the Kyle Rittenhouse case, if you can't sit on the stand once you pull that trigger and articulate why you pull that trigger, I suggest you don't ever pull the trigger. And there's some videos we're going to show later on in the hour, but I'm going to tell you the things that we're going to talk about today. I want to get into the Cancun shooting. I want to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. We're going to get into the Ahmaud Arbery case a little more. I want to talk about the NRA. Let's get into the NRA just a little bit. All right, so the National Rifle Association has come out with a nice little article talking about the Supreme Court and the right to bear arms gets its day in court. And basically on November the 3rd, it was a historic day in this country. Remember November the 3rd because for our constitutional rights in the United States, the Supreme Court, they dived into, more of our rights to see, hey, you know what? Did a previous court either not look at this case or they not decide, when it comes to the Second Amendment, when it comes to being on a subway train or a subway, like, for example, in New York, should a person have a right to defend themselves? Well, in 2008, the U.S. Supreme Court confirmed what was already clear to most Americans. The Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms, including handguns, regardless of service in an organized militia. In 2010, the High Court ratified the equally straightforward principle that states and localities, and not just the federal government, are bound to respect that right. Since then, however, the U.S. Supreme Court has remained virtually silent on the Second Amendment, with lower courts filling the vacuum by denying most Second Amendment challenges to gun control laws that came before them. It took over 10 years for the High Court to revisit the meaning of the Second Amendment in depth. And you got to think about that, because the First Amendment, everyone has a right to the First Amendment. Everyone has a right to the Third Amendment. Everyone has a right to the Fourth Amendment. The Second Amendment has a lot of restrictions. There's an age limit on the second. There's no age limit on any other of our constitutional rights. Is that what our forefathers thought? Is that what they wanted when they wrote our constitutional rights? Okay, you can have all your rights for everything else, no matter what age, everyone, except for the second. We're going to put an age limit to that, and we're going to put a lot of restrictions to that. But all the other constitutional rights, you have the right to do them, and there's no age limit at all. Think about that concept. Last Wednesday's argument proved worth the wait, with the right to keep and bear arms at long last being treated with the dignity and respect accorded other constitutional rights, a treatment notably lacking in many of the lower court cases. As in the 2008-2010 cases, it took a particularly unusual and sweeping restriction to command the justice's attention. Those earlier cases involved what amounted to outright bans on the possession of handguns. The current case, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Brune. Concerned New Yorkers may issue, a license of a concealed handgun to carry. They can do that in New York. The state-only lawful method for carrying a firearm outside of one's home is to get this license from New York. New York's, requires the presumptive denial of most applications, with only those showing an extraordinary need for self-defense, meaning that you can't get your license, a concealed handgun license in New York, unless you absolutely can prove that you really, there's an exceptional reason why you deserve to have this concealed handgun license. So, and that's going to be different for most, compared to most states. So in practice, this means that a New Yorker's access to the Second Amendment right to bear arms depends on the person's locality, the whims of local licensing officials, and particularly in New York City, whether the person has been a public official or attained celebrity status. So if you're a public official or you're a celebrity, then there's a possibility you can get a concealed handgun license in New York City. The right, in other words, is treated as a state-administered privilege for those in the upper class and the special people. The arguments in Brune were notable for their length, depth, and the degree to which the gun control advocates defending the law departed from the more confident and sweeping assertions their counterparts typically make in lower courts. Now, the justices heard nearly 2 full hours of argument here by three highly great advocates. The resulting transcript, it's 136 pages. If you're sitting on the toilet someday, you need to pick that up and take a read, because it's some really good stuff. Defending New York's law was New York State Solicitor General Barbara Underwood, and in special appearance on behalf of the Biden administration, Brian Fletcher, Principal Deputy Solicitor General for the U.S. Department of Justice. All of the court's justices joined the questioning of the litigants, with both sides being pressed to opine on complicated questions of law history and hypothetical scenarios. The justices will certainly have their work cut out for them in sorting through the competing claims of the litigants and the numerous friends of the court that submitted briefs on the variety of topics. But several themes emerged during the argument that seemed to resolve issues that lower court cases, perhaps even, treated as open questions, with the gun control side retreating from some of its bolder claims. Underwood, for example, admitted that on behalf of New York, that with regard to the Heller decision, I almost said Hitler there, the Heller decision, she is quite content to treat it as rightly decided and has no quarrel with it. More fundamentally, though, both Underwood and Fletcher treated as a given that the Second Amendment applies to carrying firearms in at least some public places for purposes of self-defense. The gun control litigants also argued that legitimacy of gun control laws primarily hinges on the history and tradition of arms regulation in the United States, rather than on a balancing of interests that allows judges to put their thumbs on the scale for whatever side they happen to prefer. In admissions that may come back to haunt them, the gun control litigants acknowledge that New York's scheme is a bottom and an attempt simply to restrict as much as possibly the total number of firearms in the state, regardless of the risk profile of their possessors. They're saying that, hey, in a country with the Second Amendment as a fundamental right, simply having more firearms cannot be a problem and can't be a government interest just to put a cap on the number of firearms, according to Clement. Now, the justice also proved a length for answers about what sorts of restrictions would still be permissible. And if New York had to recognize a right to bear handguns publicly as a general matter, this seemingly would not have been necessary if the consensus was that New York's current regulations are permissible. There are, of course, no guarantees that any court case will go any particular way. So we're going to see how this all plays out. There was every indication that those thresholds were met in the Bruin oral argument, that for now it is substantially victory in vindicating the Second Amendment, and one that was made possible by the National Rifle Association and members and supporters. So we'll see how it all plays out. We'll see what they say in a few months, from the High Court of the United States. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Hi, this is Stephen Williford, the Barefoot Defender. I get my global gun news from Michael Cargill at Come and Talk It.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. The prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do you say? You say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can and will.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
Oh, no worries. We're back and we're going to be talking about, let's see, Cancun. I want to talk about Cancun. I also want to talk Kyle Rittenhouse, but you know what? Let's jump into Kyle Rittenhouse. All right, so, man, that case it's on fire this week. A lot of stuff happened, and I think it's an open and shut case. You know, if there's a good jury here that's really paying attention and they're looking and they're really observing, they have an open mind, I think, Kyle Rittenhouse should be found not guilty. I think the only thing he should be convicted of probably is going to be the gun charge, which is a misdemeanor. I don't think there's any way around that. He was, I believe he was unlawfully carrying the rifle according to the Wisconsin law. So he should be convicted of that. And let me tell you something. I don't pick sides when it comes to this stuff. You need to understand the law and know what you can and cannot do if you're going to carry a firearm. You also need to pull your pants up and realize that when you do pull the trigger, there's some consequences of you pulling that trigger. And there's a possibility you may have to sit on the stands and justify why you pulled the trigger. And if you're, and unfortunately, if you're not old enough, to express that and to get that out on a stand for a jury, then you may want to think twice about pulling the gun out. You may want to use something else. That's just the facts of it. So let's get into this a little bit. We have got one video. I didn't set this up really well at all, but there's want to get into the first video of Grosskreutz. How do you say his name? You know how to pronounce his name?
Grosskreutz?
Grosskreutz? Yeah, whatever. Mr. K. That's great. It's a G. Is it a G?
The guy with one arm now. Huh?
Yeah, who says, my arm was obliterated. He loves saying that. My arm was obliterated. Well, if you didn't point your Glock at somebody and put it in their face, then he wouldn't have blown it off.
Uh-huh.
But take a look at what this idiot said on the stands. On the stand.
Grosskreutz, I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 67. That's a photo of you, yes?
Yes.
Okay. That's Mr. Rittenhouse?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you'd agree your firearm is pointed at Mr. Rittenhouse, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And once your firearm is pointed at Mr. Rittenhouse, that's when he fires his gun. Yes?
No.
Sir, look, I don't want to... Does this look like right now your arm is being shot?
That looks like my bicep being vaporized, yes.
Okay. And it's being vaporized as you're pointing your gun directly at him. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so when you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him with your arms up in the air, he never fired, right?
Correct.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
Now, do me a favor, freeze that right there. I want everyone to see this guy's face. Because that's the face, at that moment, he knew he messed up. Right at that moment. He knew he was done. And the prosecutor sit there and put his face into his hands because he knew at that moment he screwed up. Because it somehow, when you're not thinking about it, the truth will slip out. And the truth came right out. Look, dude, you pointed your gun at this guy, whether you meant to do it or not, so you say, but you did it. He didn't know why you're pointing the gun at him, but when you pull back, you put your hands up, he put his rifle down. When you went forward, you pointed a gun at his face, what was his words? Eviscerated.
What did he say? Vaporized.
He vaporized your arm, and just like he should have. Maybe should have pulled it up a little higher, but he vaporized your arm. You know, and that's what happens. You play. Listen, people. You play with games. This is what happens. There's a few letters I want to say about this. You know, it's FOFA. You know, figure that one out. And he FO'd and FA'd right there. At that moment, he knew he messed up. People, you play games, and this is what happens. You need to understand the consequences of your actions. This guy apparently, and people are saying that he was a convicted felon. I don't think that's true. I think that the way I'm reading everything, Mr. Grosskreutz, however you pronounce his name, I think he had a handgun license that was expired, and so he was unlawfully carrying a handgun, and so he should be charged as well, and he should be sitting on trial as well because he instigated this incident. You know, he was the reason why he was shot. You know, by them acting like a mob, like a bunch of thugs, bunch of gang members, thugs attacking someone, they got exactly what they asked for. You know, if this guy was, Rittenhouse is running, they literally this guy kicked his face in, another guy hit him with a skateboard, and then he's pulling a gun on him. What is he supposed to do? So I think he should be not guilty. I honestly think this is not guilty. Now, Skip says GG was a good guy with a gun, said he was addressing what he thought was an active shooter. Now, this guy was a thug, and he thought he was a police officer, and he's going to chase someone down the road, you know. And, you know, you thought you're trying to apprehend someone. You don't kick him in the face. You don't hit him with a skateboard. You don't pull a gun in their face and not say freeze. You just pull a gun in their face to try to shoot them.
So you mean a good citizen doesn't whack someone with a skateboard in the head?
While they're chasing them down the road and knock them down? No, I don't think so. I'm not buying that. They're all a bunch of thugs, bunch of criminals. And I tell you, when I watch this video, I eat some popcorn and watch it. It's hilarious to me. They all got what they deserve. And then take a look at and I'm gonna dog everyone out today. Everyone. I said it once and I say it again. If you're going to carry a gun, you need to learn what the laws are in the state that you live. You got to learn what the laws are. Oh. You got to learn what the laws are in the state that you live in. Learn what the laws are and learn use of force and deadly force. Learn where you can and cannot take a firearm. Because if you don't, you're going to have to articulate why did you pull this gun out on the stands. If you can't articulate that, that's going to look bad. Now, to the jury, this Rittenhouse probably looked pretty good. To me, I think he looked bad on the jury. I think the prosecutor, kind of tripped him up a little bit, but we'll see what the jury says. I still think he's not guilty, but take a listen to Kyle Rittenhouse on the stand.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side. And I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were three people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what That's where I run.
We're going to just take time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes, and please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial.
Alice, can I get some tears for $200, please? I didn't see any tears. I'm sorry. No tears. I didn't see it. Yes, I feel sorry for this young man. I feel very sorry for him. I think, like I said, I think he was in the right. I think he did what he had to do. I think he was trying to avoid the situation at all costs, and he wound up having to pull the trigger. and do it. But I'll probably be in that same situation if I have to do it, and I'll sit there and fake crying also. Try to get myself out of this situation when I'm back to the corner. Everyone's going to do it. Um, like I said, if you can't articulate it, the man, this week, I'm gonna tell you, one of the things that happened this week in our license to carry handgun course, I had a young man that was in class, and he went to Houston to participate in a card game, and him and his friends won a large sum of money. I want to say between, probably $45,000 between the two of them. And so they get in their car and then they drive back to Austin. As they're driving back to Austin, they get to Columbus, Texas, to stop and switch drivers to get gas and change drivers. One person goes into the store, and when this happens, two guys jumped out of the vehicle, grabbed one guy by the throat, put a gun to his face, and robbed him. They actually followed him an hour from from where they came from, the origination point, to that gas station. They were very diligent in following him an hour to rob them, take the money, and then get away. And so this was all caught on. It was all caught on camera and everything. And the one thing the guy said to me, he's like, "Man, I wish I had a gun." I said, "Why?" It wouldn't have changed anything because one, you were inside the gas station. You didn't even witness anything. So you having a gun would not have changed anything. What would have changed is if you're aware of your surroundings at all times. Try not to put yourself in those situations initially. That's what should have changed. So you know that you won this card game. Okay, I'm going to go from point A to point B. I'm not going to stop. And I'm also going to make sure that no one's following me. I'm always aware of my surroundings, checking to see what vehicles are behind me. That's why I take all those extra steps. I have 3 cameras in my vehicle. Take all those extra steps to protect myself. And you also have to check to make sure you're not being followed. It happens all the time in Austin with business owners. When they go to the bank, happens all the time. You never see this on the news because, one, they're embarrassed to talk about it. They go to the bank, and when they're pulling out from the bank, someone follows them from the bank to their destination, whether it's their home or back to their business, and they rob them, whether it's going from the business to the bank, and they get robbed. It happens all the time around the country in Austin, and it happens a lot with bar owners here in Austin when they're doing their money drops. I'm telling you, people, you have to change your route. Don't take the same route. Don't have the same schedule. You got to have a plan of what you're going to do. Need to make sure you don't make any extra stops. Don't stop at a store in between going to the bank or whatever. Do it at different times. Don't do it at night. Don't do that money drop, at night after the bar closes. You got to have different, and I find myself, doing a lot of different things where I will switch vehicles. I will switch vehicles in the middle of my route sometimes. I do a lot of different weird things. I do that because I take my personal safety very serious. And when you're doing things like that, you're making those drops, you're doing that, you got to think there's a possibility someone's following you and because you're doing the same routine every single week and they know that routine. It could be an employee that, that doesn't work there anymore and they know your routine. You got to think about those things. You got to look around, put your head on the swivel when you're doing these things. That changes things. Not necessarily you having a gun may change anything. Because when someone's got the gun pointing in your face, there's nothing you can do. They got to jump on you. What are you going to do? Nothing. But you can do something prior to that by not putting yourself in that position. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Folks, this is Doug Man Jones. And I get my gun news from Michael Cargill at Come and Talk It.
Hello, my name is Edwin Walker. I'm an independent program attorney with Texas Law Shield. I want to talk to you today about an issue that we see on a daily basis. In fact, you yourself will encounter it on a daily basis, and that is the subject of road rage. I am sure that you have all seen road rage. You may have actually been involved in a road rage incident. Now, if you're a responsible gun owner, I'm going to give you a few words of advice on how to react when you find yourself in one of these unfortunate road rage incidents. While on the roadways, we all observe something that makes us upset. Whether it's poor driving, unsafe driving, or just simply somebody being very discourteous. By all means, you should restrain yourself from engaging that person and telling them how bad their actions were, because this can be perceived as an act of road rage. If you're a lawful gun owner, you have a firearm in your vehicle, you do not want to be viewed as the aggressor in a road rage situation. Now, with regard to a situation where an individual has chosen to rage against you, and you are the actual victim of the road rage, if you and the other individuals are still in their automobiles, do not use your firearm to respond to any of the rager's activities. This is because law enforcement views the fact that you're both still safely in your metal boxes as removing any threat of immediacy that you may be harmed. So please, if you have a gun, somebody is raging against you, forget you have a gun. Don't display it, don't brandish it, don't show it, don't point it, and for God's sake, don't fire it. This could result in a lot of trouble for you. Now let's look at a situation where a road rage incident has escalated. It has escalated to the point where one of the participants has actually gotten out of their vehicle. We recommend that you stay in your vehicle at all times. Do not exit your vehicle, because the person who exits their vehicle is going to be looked at as the aggressor. If the other individual has exited their vehicle and they are not in contact with your vehicle and they do not have a weapon, then do not feel that you can display your weapon in an act of self-defense. People are allowed to just simply stand there and scream at you, scream whatever they want. Until they make a demonstrative effort to try to harm you, there is no immediate threat that would justify displaying or shooting or brandishing your firearm. Now, in the event that the person shows their own weapon, in particular a firearm, the existence of their weapon would give you...
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now, here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so let's go to Mexico. So Cancun shooting. A video shows moment gangsters open fire on rival drug dealers outside a luxury resort in Cancun. Now, I've been to Cancun several times, let me tell you. Nice place. You always have a great time. You can relax and just chill. And it's been an unwritten rule that, gangs, the drug lords, drug cartels are not supposed to, supposed to be like a little safe area. They seem to be breaking that rule now. So surveillance footage captured the moment a group of Mexican gangsters launched a shootout that left 2 suspected drug dealers dead and 4 Americans wounded at a resort in Mexico. Take a look at some of these videos. All right. And so gunfire erupted on the beach by the Hyatt Ziva Riviera Cancun in Puerto Morales on 4 November. Now, officials said that a party of 10 to 15 armed criminals with ties to Sinaloa cartel arrived on the beach by boat and shot dead 2 suspected drug dealers in what's been described as a targeted execution. Now, the video surveillance cameras on the property shows the alleged assassin wandered on the beach with large guns before the shooting. And that statement there is according to Lopez Dorega Digital. And the minutes later, the gunmen are seen rushing toward the resort and tackling a man who was later shot dead. And so also you'll see, you see the people that are visiting there, the tourists, all gathered together in one little area and then finally allowed to go back to their room, after the all clear was given. Crazy scene there in Cancun, Mexico. This is, like I said, normally, it's a great place, awesome place to go to. I love Cancun. Relax. I love the hotels. I love having a great time. Love the beach. I love the pools. I love just sitting in the room, love the hot tub. And when something like this happens, so, man, you can just never let your guard down anywhere. And unfortunately, we can't take guns to Cancun. Yeah, I tried to get a permit in Mexico. They're like, no, dude, that's not going to happen. And if we do give it to you, you can only carry like a 32. I was like, what am I supposed to do with that? I need more power. They have AKs and ARs over there. The drug cartel.
32?
Yeah.
22. You mean.
32 caliber. Yeah, I know, right?
32. Huh?
Yeah, say, no, you don't have like a 32 caliber. Like, come on, man.
32 Magnum.
Yeah, crazy. Insane. So that's Cancun. All right, so let's see. Some other stuff I want to talk about today. FAA. All right, so the FAA, you know, Zach, we talked about this one time when I said, you know, I talked about the FFA and I talked about unruly passengers on the FFA. How many passengers do you think have actually the government has taken a case to court? You know, and keep in mind the number of incidents that have happened this year.
Oh, there's a bunch of them,
like
right?
Doubled, yeah, almost tripled.
Isn't it a high number of incidents but a low number of prosecutions?
Only 37 cases have been taken, prosecuted by the DOJ. 37
out of hundreds, right?
Out of 100, yeah. So more than 5,000 passenger complaints. So the Federal Aviation Administration, which cannot prosecute violent airline passengers, has sent only 37 of the more than 5,000 passenger complaints this year to the Justice Department, highlighting a significant challenge when it comes to enforcing the strict rules for the increasingly unruly skies. Now, FFA said it has sent the most egregious cases to the Justice Department in a rare joint statement issued by the two agencies there. And keep in mind, if they may not prosecute you, but let me tell you, there is a fine. So if you do screw up, you may not be prosecuted, but I guarantee those 5,000 passengers, the 5,000 passenger complaints, they receive the fine. They can get a fine up to $13,000. and so the
so the passenger gets the fine?
That's right. So like if you're unruly on the plane, they have to remove you from the plane, you're going to be fined.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they will fine you.
Maybe that's what they want. They don't care about prosecuting, but as long as they get their $10,000
they can fine you,
fine.
and then usually the airline will bar you from flying on the airline. And now that gets you from that airline, but doesn't mean you can't say, okay, well, now I've been kicked off. We had to make an emergency stop in Denver, Colorado. We're supposed to go from New York to California. We made an emergency stop in Denver, Colorado, kicked someone off the plane in Denver. Now they have to go to another airline, buy another ticket to get to their destination because they are banned from flying on that airline that they got kicked off on.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's why I just drive. I drive myself. The multi-agency announcement comes after months of pressure from airline worker unions for the federal government to get tougher on violence on commercial flights, and flight crews have reported 5,033 such incidents so far this year, and the FAA has initiated enforcement action in 227 cases. Where the evidence supports criminal review, the FAA refers the cases to the FBI, the joint statement said. Now, and the FAA also unveiled a new public service announcement on Thursday, highlighting an FAA letter referring a case to the Justice Department and outlining an actual fine issue. You don't want this letter, Dad says, hoping to deter bad behavior. Now, but unions underscore that in many cases, passengers walk free. The FAA does not have the power to prosecute criminal cases, only assess civil fines up to, guess how much?
10 grand.
I thought it was 13. It's $37,000. They can give you a fine up to $37,000.
Wow.
That's, I'll take the jail time.
I heard they taped a guy to his seat once.
Oh yeah, they do that several times. That's they don't have handcuffs, so yeah, they duct tape him to their seat when they're unruly.
Ooh.
I need about 5 male passengers to the front of the plane, please. So you can hold this person down and then duct tape them to the seat.
Yeah. I bet a bunch of people just jump at that opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'll hold some guy
You know
down.
what? Yeah, I need to get this frustration out. Let's
Ooh.
tie this joke up. He's been irritating me, all day. So definitely let's tie this sucker up.
His son's been screaming.
Oh yeah. An Austin passenger was fined $32,000 after she punched, screamed, and snatched cookies. So the Federal Aviation Administration released its list of fines for unruly passengers on flights, and the biggest was charged to a woman flying out of Austin Bergstrom International Airport. The woman, one of 5,114 year to date. The FAA reports of unruly behavior, and she was fined $32,000 after a flight from Austin to San Francisco on Horizon Air on May 18. Now, the passenger was one of more than 100 passengers that caused this, this disturbance involving a physical, assault. Now, according to the FFA, the passenger did not follow crew instructions to fasten her seatbelt. She punched and screamed at her husband and son, repeatedly diverting flight attendants from their duties, and she threw trash at a flight attendant and snatched cookies from a nearby passenger. So, man, that's when you ask your wife or your girlfriend to handle that. Honey, I need you to handle this one for me. It wasn't the only Texas case. Another woman going from Dallas to Fort Worth to Aspen, Dallas-Fort Worth to Aspen, was fined $23,000 on March the 11th after she verbally abused flight attendants after she realized her assigned seat would not recline. Even though multiple passengers offered to switch seats with her, and she eventually switched seats with another passenger, the woman continued to verbally abuse attendants and then struck a flight attendant on the right forearm and attempted to do so again. And the woman refused to comply with the face mask policy and was met by law enforcement at the gate. This happens a lot, and the agency, has announced more than $225,000 in fines, ranging from $9,000 to $32,000 against 10 total passengers, out of Austin Bergstrom Airport. The FAA said disturbances have been on a decline since it implemented its zero tolerance campaign in March to curb inappropriate behavior on flights in January through its still too high, and the agency is opting to fine passengers for problematic behavior that U.S. airlines have had to ban at least 3,000 since last May. So, wow. $225,000 in fines out of Austin Bergstrom Airport because of unruly passengers, ranging from $9,000 to $32,000. Man, just get on there, sit down, read a book, and be quiet, and go from point A to point B. They say put on your mask, put your seatbelt on, put your seatbelt on. Hey, can I have a drink? Get a drink, chill, relax, take a pill, take an aspirin. That's it. That's all it takes. Oh, man. Killing me here. All right. Oh, man, let's hear this PSA.
Fighting is not good when you're on a plane.
I'll go to jail if they keep doing that stuff.
I would be really scared.
I would not like that if someone did that to me.
They should know better if they're like adults.
They're a grown-up and they have to play a good role model.
I think it's very disrespectful.
You can distract the pilot if it gets that bad.
That is so unsafe.
They should stop.
So listen to the kids. Listen to the babies. Adults. The children are telling you how to act on the plane because you don't know how to conduct yourselves. That's your PSA from the FAA. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
This is Brittany Glaze, and I get my global gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02. The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were compliant with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
Man, the University of Texas, woo, boy, it was close. They hung in there. Let me tell you. They tried. They came, but they didn't succeed. Not at all. They hung in there. Maybe it's time to get rid of the coach. He's got to go.
Get rid of Steve Sarkisian?
Steve's got to go. Steve's got to go, folks. You got to go. See ya. Hit the door.
He has a guaranteed 6-year, $34 million contract.
Oh, guaranteed 6 years?
Guaranteed.
Oh, they can't get rid of him.
They can.
It's going to cost him. It's going to cost him.
Yeah, it'll be expensive.
You got to pay him for 6 years. Got to go, buddy. You got to go. If you can't beat one of the worst teams in the country, it's time to hit the road, Jack. Got to go. Sorry. We're trying to hang in there for you. That's right. But it's time's up. See you later. Hit the door. See ya. Hit it. All right. Oh boy, I tell you, man, UT. We're gonna figure something out. Let's go back to the Kyle Rittenhouse case a little bit. Is that the one I want to go back to? Oh no, let's go back to Ahmaud Arbery case. All right, so and someone Harold says, I wish they stopped calling it the Ahmaud trial because he isn't the one that's on trial. I wish they wouldn't title it that way. Well, I think it's important that to mention his name because these guys here that they're gonna be convicted. They will come and go, be put in jail. But you got to remember, what this is about. This is about a guy, Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging went into a house that's under construction, and a lot of people do this. Zach, we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
You know how we're exercising or something in the morning, walking or whatever, and you're like, hey man, this house over here is for sale, and I'm like, no, Zach, I'm not going over there. Come on,
I went up to the house just
he's
like look in the window of this empty house that's for sale.
You're like, wow,
you didn't want to come check it out.
Absolutely not. I stood in the street, did I not? That's
You
right.
did.
I stood. I'm not going to. It's like, no, come on, man. Let's check it out. Let's see if the door's open. Let's go in and take a look. No, sir, not me. I'm standing in the middle of the street.
I guess I'm just brave. Okay.
That's right. You're a whole other person than I. I'm standing in the street so everybody can see me. I'm not going on the sidewalk. I'm not going anywhere near this empty house.
Are you saying I look friendlier and more personable than you?
Yes, sir. You look a lot more friendlier and more personable than I. And
I have heard that I look very friendly.
That's
and
right.
personable.
So you can get away with it. I cannot, and I don't do that. So call it like I see it. That's all I'm saying. I call it like I see it. And we joke about that, but I do that stuff. I'm serious about it. I don't play around with that stuff. I'm not putting myself in those type of situations. All right. So let's go back to this case a little bit, because one of the attorneys in the case was like, hey, we don't want none of them black preachers coming up here in the courthouse at all, because we just don't want none of that stuff. Now the judge, kind of got irritated at one of the attorneys also, and kind of had a little nice talking to the attorney. Take a listen to this.
Agree or disagree with this court, that is your prerogative, but to act in the way that you just did in front of this panel, disrespect, I don't care whether you like my rulings or not, or you like me or not, but in this court, the Superior Court, it is axiomatic that counsel show at least respect for what the court is doing. And what you just did shows a lack of respect for what the court is trying to do here, which is create an environment which is fair to all parties. I would suggest that you take a moment to think about that. I'm going to step off the bench because I found that, I'll just call it rude, all right? I have tolerated a number of things in the courtroom, including, flip charts, writing in the middle of, the jury gets distracted when you were doing the flip charts here, jumping up and moving the boards. I would suggest that you temper some of that very quickly, because it will not be tolerated in this court. And I will leave it at that. I do not need an explanation. I do not need an apology, none of that. But I would suggest that we take a moment and think about the way that you're reacting to the court's instructions and rulings. We're in recess.
I think the judge was quite nice, in putting it that way. Say, look, dude, whatever you're doing, stop doing it. And you know what? And we're going to stop and take a little break here because, I may say something that I don't want to say because this is a live broadcast and everybody in the world's watching this. So he said, we're going to take a break. And he was actually pretty nice compared to the judge that was in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And they both waited until the jury left the room before, he gave them that nice little talking to. Now, going back to the Ahmaud Arbery case, the things that you say on the 911 call, the things that you say when the police arrive at the scene, keep this in mind. That 911 call is going to be used in court. So if the 911 operator asks you what crime this person, what is this person doing wrong, and you say, I don't know, but he's running, that's going to be used against you in court. When the police officer arrives at the scene and they start asking you, well, come on, well, tell me what happened. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Remember that. Take a look at the dash cam video. We have two separate dash cam videos, pretty much the same guys talking when the police arrived at the scene just as they got there. Take a look and listen to this.
Any other weapons or anything on you?
Just that.
Okay.
If he would have stopped, this would have happened.
That's fine. That's fine. Like I said, just take a breath. Okay.
I want it done right.
I got you. So
this doesn't look good. It just shot at me. Last thing I've ever done want to do in my life.
All right, and then we got this other video. Take a look at this one.
I said, Travis, the same guy that broke in the house down there
Who's Travis?
My son, the guy that shot him.
Okay.
I said, come on, let's go.
McMichael says he grabbed his gun. Travis McMichael grabbed his shotgun, chasing Arbery for several minutes when their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, joins. Bryan, who recorded the shooting when it happens, has publicly maintained he was just a witness, but that day he told police he got involved in the chase.
I hollered at them. I said, y'all got him? They got down to the end down there somewhere. I must have passed him because I pulled out of my driveway, was going to try to block him.
Bryan questioned if they should have chased him in the first place. A new clip of the video Bryan shot, also released today, shows Bryan trying to stop Arbery before the deadly confrontation.
We run out to stop him, to talk to him. He took off running. He never did. Stopped. He come out of the truck running at us. I told him stop, stop, stop till he hit me. I had nothing to do.
Now, there's one altercation that happened by the guy that was following them, the other neighbor there, where he tried to ram or block Ahmaud Arbery, and so Ahmaud, landed against his vehicle. And I thought it was funny there because the guy said, well, he tried to get in my truck. Well, no, you actually jerked the wheel. There's another video where he jerks the wheel and almost runs him over, in the vehicle while he's running down the street. This guy's, they're in vehicles and he's on his feet. What is he supposed to do? What are you supposed to do in a situation like that? And it's funny how no one's talking about this case. This is, they're only focusing, and I hate how the media only has tunnel vision. They're only focusing on the Kyle Rittenhouse case. They're not focusing on the Ahmaud Arbery case at all. And this is a very important case. It shows how you cannot act like a vigilante. No matter how much you think you can, you don't have that right. You're not law enforcement. You're not police. You're just a gun owner. I don't care if you used to be a police officer. I don't care if you're a retired police officer. You're not law enforcement. You're not working. You're not in uniform. You're not on duty. You need to call the police, 911, let them handle the situation, get a good description of that person, take a video, get a picture of them, maybe follow. You cannot chase someone. You can't chase them, can't block their path to stop them from going about their way. You're violating their constitutional right by keeping them from going about their business. You don't have that right. And, I had Skip ask me this, early in the week, well, who do you, when it looks at the Rittenhouse case, he said, what if the other guy had a gun and pulled his gun out first? I said, he who has a gun, he who pulls it out first wins. That's the bottom line. And then, here's how you get away with murder. Don't videotape it and keep your mouth shut when the police get there. Let your attorney do the talking for you. I'm not trying to teach you how to get away with the crime or anything like that, but that's the fact of the case. That's how it is. And the only reason why we're talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case is because the guy that was in the vehicle behind them recorded the thing, and there's a video of it. If there wasn't a video, we would not be here discussing this case today. Wouldn't be up for discussion. It would not have gone to trial. You never would have heard of this guy's name at all, because this didn't even come up until like 4 months after the incident even happened, 4 or 5 months after it happened, only because there's a video for the media to pick up, and there's some meat to it. It was juicy then because there's a video. There was no video, you never would have heard of this guy, and then they never would have been arrested. They never would have gone to trial, because it took them months after this was released to the media for there to be an uproar in the communities, in Georgia and around the country. They decided to finally arrest these guys and charge them with something, because they would have gotten off scot-free if it would have stayed out of the press. When we come back, I want to talk about Remington. Gunmaker Remington is moving to Georgia. I want to talk about this pastor who pulled, who actually, grabbed a man guy pulled the gun out in church. And so he stopped that shooting. He stopped the mass shooting. Very heroic pastor there. We're going to talk about him. And also going to talk about this boy who's jailed for murder of a friend in a decapitation attempt. Going to talk about that. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Jack Jones here, and I get my gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean, or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. The prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do you say? You say, "I invoke my right to remain silent," and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can and will be used against you because you're not being interrogated. You're just starting to spout off. This is why it's imperative that you know your rights and you shouldn't rely on the police to read them to you. Affirmatively invoke your rights. Say, "I'm invoking my right to remain silent and my right to my attorney." Once you do that, the police legally shouldn't continue questioning you without your attorney present. But remember, there's a second part to this equation. After invoking your rights, you must exercise those rights. That means you have to keep your mouth closed. Protect yourself. Don't let the legal system take advantage of you after an incident. And Law Shield members, if you've been involved in a self-defense incident, remember to call the emergency hotline and speak with your independent program attorney.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
You know, Zach, we didn't talk about the concert because we weren't on air last week because of the race and stuff. So we never did talk about the concert down in Houston.
Oh, Travis Scott.
Travis Scott, that's right. And some people asked me, you know, what my thoughts were about the Travis Scott concert. Well, to me, that's going to be a complete security mess up, screw up. So whoever's in charge of security, whether it's the Houston Police Department or whoever's the head security, this is going to be something that they screwed up. And also the whoever's promoting the incident, you know, they screwed up as well. Here's why I say that. Because the moment that the crowd, when they opened the gates and the crowd rushed the gate, that concert should have been shut down right then and there. It never should have started. That was a complete security breakdown, and it should have been stopped right there and canceled immediately. They didn't do that. That was there's your sign right there. The reason I say that is because it's not about people rushing the stage. You just had over 100 people rush the gate, hop fence, break down your metal detectors, get inside the concert, and they were not checked. You could have had guns in there. It could have been a shooting that happened or something like that. And that's the worst case that I'm thinking of. So immediately, if I'm head security, if I'm the Houston Police Department and I'm in charge of security, I would have shut that concert down right then and there because we have a serious breach of security. We just had 100 people go through the gate. They weren't checked. You know, we don't know if they brought in guns or anything like that. And all these people are talking about, I was drugged. Someone stuck me with something. I don't think so. Please stop saying that crap. You people know that you were doing drugs, you bought drugs when you went there because that's what happens at these concerts. You know, all these little underground concerts that happen around town, around the country, and concerts like that, Travis Scott, There, you're doing acid, you're doing crank, whatever. So save it for your mother or whoever else going to believe your lies, because no one ejected you with anything. You took it yourself, because that was the purpose. Everybody that went to this concert was high. Okay, so enough of that. So that's the bottom line. It's going to be head of security. That concert should have been shut down the second that they rushed that gate. You should have shut it down, made everyone go home, because we have a serious breach of security, and this place is not secure. That could have been a bomb. That could have been a gun. Could have been anything. But it turned out that people end up rushing the stage and crushing each other because they were out of control. And your first sign was you lost control right when the gates opened.
Yeah, that was at 2 p.m. also. When this
Plenty of time to
VIP
shut it down.
checkpoint was destroyed.
Exactly. So everyone wants to point the blame at, wherever they're trying to point the blame, but that's where it lies, right there with security. And no one has mentioned that at all. There's their sign. All right, so I want to jump over to talk about Smith & Wesson and also Remington. So Remington is moving. They're going to Georgia. And Smith & Wesson is also moving. They're going to Tennessee. And you know what? It's about time. And they've been in the Northeast, and you got to think about it. Why are these manufacturers in the Northeast? Why are your major manufacturers there? Well, because that's pretty much where the country, all started. Everything started in the Northeast, and they've been there for decades since the beginning. So, and that's where they stayed. And because of the restrictive gun laws in those states, they're saying, okay, we're done. We're done. That's it. We're fed up. We're leaving. And I'm glad they're leaving. It's about time. And I got so much stuff on order, man. Please, I need you to hurry up and get moved so we can get this stuff taken care of. So I need my Remington TAC 14s. My goodness, let's make it so. Make it happen. Blink, blink, click your heels. Let's go. So Remington, they're out of there. It's a Georgia deal of $100 million, an 856 job deal that's going to happen. So the company announced Monday that it will invest $100 million in the operation in LaGrange, Georgia, southwest of Atlanta. That's just north of Columbus, Georgia. They're north of Fort Benning, hiring 856 people over 5 years. That's going to be big for that area. LaGrange, Georgia, that's a little small, little rinky-dink town. So, man, that's going to be huge for them. It was not immediately clear what effect the transfer would have on Remington's operation in New York and Tennessee. The company owns the parts of the former Remington Outdoor Company, which makes rifles, shotguns, and some handguns, after the former parent auctioned its assets in pieces last year during a bankruptcy proceeding in Alabama. And a lot of people forget about that. So they went through a bankruptcy proceeding, which stopped the manufacturing of a lot of firearms. And so we're, with COVID-19, they're going through bankruptcy. Now they're going to be moving. This slows down the manufacturing of firearms. Everything plays into all this stuff, And so it's going to be 3 years, Zach. 3 years before we get back to normal, to where, there's some decent stock of decent stuff in all the stores. 3 years. Only your big box powerhouse stores can actually get, and get some stuff, and no one can maintain it.
Like the distributors?
Yeah, distributors, having a hard time keeping stuff as well. It comes in and goes right out the door. And I'll ask them. I talk to them every day. Hey, are we getting back to normal yet? No, nowhere near back to normal. So it's going to be a while. I think it's going to be 3 years before we get back to normal.
Yeah, there's so many different shortages, from simple cardboard to ship things in boxes to like motors, especially things made out of metal and aluminum that usually come from China.
It's funny you say that, because I didn't even think about that, because I see stuff that comes in. I'm like, why is this in this type of box? Why is this gun in this refrigerator box? It's just really weird, like really weird stuff that you don't see. Why are they reusing the box? I'm seeing they're reusing them,
folding down other boxes to make a box of that size.
As simple as not having the box to be able to ship stuff can hold stuff up. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, and some people are just so impatient when it comes to getting their stuff. Let me tell you, you walk to the gun store and you're all upset and you're yelling and screaming because you're not getting your gun. Let me tell you something. You just walked into a gun store yelling and screaming. We're not selling you a gun. You walk in yelling at me. Why am I going to give you a gun?
Sending that gun back.
Think about that concept. You walk in yelling at me. Why am I going to sell you a gun?
That's about as smart as yelling at your waiter or waitress, right?
People are so stupid. And I just sit there and laugh like, really? Okay, are you really doing this? So Remington's moving. They're going to Georgia. Smith & Wesson is moving. They're going to Tennessee. So this is good. I hope we hurry up and get this done so we can finally get back to normal. All this stuff came about like in, right, September, October, November timeframe. So hopefully, by next, it's going to take years because they got to build the building or get it all outfitted, get it ready to go. And it's going to be hard to get. Here's the thing. So they're getting new technology, getting new stuff. So whatever chips or parts they need, it's going to be a delay in getting this building done because I've been told that the chips that they need to work the equipment to make certain automated stuff is backed up.
Yeah, that's holding up car production as well.
Right. The chips for the cars and the chips for the equipment that actually makes the cars. Mm-hmm. It's like it doesn't stop. It's just ongoing. It just doesn't stop, Why can't I get a brand new car? Well, there's several reasons why you can't get a brand new car. All right, so let's talk about this pastor. So, got a pastor disarms a man who pulled out a gun during a church service. Now, the heroic actions of a pastor and parishioners potentially prevented any blood from being shed at a North Nashville church. And so, man, I tell you, and this is amazing because you don't hear stuff like this. Because usually when you walk into a church, the only person that sees the door is the preacher, the minister. Everyone else, all of the parishioners, their backs are to the door. So they can't see who walks in the door. That's how the churches are set up. And so it's up to the pastor, unless they have some type of church security. And so I'm happy that a lot of churches are actually getting security. They're having someone in the parking lot, watch the parking lot doing service, and they have a security in back of the church, just to make sure that no one comes in, and they're able to defend themselves if they do. And I'm glad this pastor had his head on the swivel. He was aware of his surroundings, and he protected the members of the church because we don't hear stories like this all the time. He was able to take the gun from this guy and stop any bloodshed whatsoever, including the guy that walked in with the gun. All right, so a boy was jailed for murder of a friend in a decapitation attempt. So a teenager has been jailed for a minimum of 16 years and 36 days for murdering his 12-year-old friend after luring him to a woodland and attempt to decapitate him. Now, the 15-year-old boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons, repeatedly stabbed, this young man on the ground off of Elkhorn Green in Fishtoft near Boston, Lincolnshire, on December 12th last year, just 2 days before his 13th birthday. The teenager's trial at Lincoln Town Court was told this guy, man, just this guy stabbed this guy, this in the neck. This is just crazy. It's a crazy, nasty case. So you gotta, parenting is always a problem. It's something that I always talk about. You gotta parent your kids. And lastly, I want to talk about Alec Baldwin. He says Hollywood productions should hire police officers to inspect on-site firearms. Oh, Alec trying to pass the buck there. You know what? If the buck stops with you, you're that person that when someone hands your gun, no matter what, you need to check. Like I tell my students in class, before you put your hands on the gun, one, don't put your finger on the trigger. If you're right-handed, take that right index finger, put that right index finger on the side of the gun. Pick up the gun, and then remove the magazine and check. This is Michael Cargill, and you've been listening to Come and Talk It.